everybody, this is the Wikstrand. So in 2010 saw the release of Shanghai. It was a disastrous flop at the box office and was very quickly forgotten. But does it really deserve to have been forgotten? I don't know. In my opinion, this movie had almost everything I love about movies of this kind. It was almost tailor-made for me, so I was a little sad when watching it and discovering that it wasn't all that it could have been. But it is not a bad movie. It is actually a really good movie that should have been a fantastic movie, but where did things go wrong? That's what we're gonna find out today. This is my review of Shanghai. Shanghai, October 1941. Paul has just arrived from Berlin and he's going to start at, this local English-speaking newspaper. The thing is that he has, slight Nazi sympathies and stuff like that, even though he is not, against America. But the thing is that this is just all a cover because Paul is in fact a spy and he is here to do some spy shit. But the thing is that the guy who went, a couple of months before him to Shanghai, Cooper, has been killed, murdered. And Paul sets it upon himself to try to find out who killed him and why. Because Cooper was obviously onto something and Paul is trying to, follow in his footsteps via his notebooks and stuff like that. And during this process he comes across a mysterious woman called Anna, played by Gong Li, who is married to a local gangster played by Chow Yun-fat, who is tolerated by both the Japanese and the international players that is trying to navigate themselves around in Shanghai. Does they have something to do with this thing? And what did Cooper actually come across? And the thing is that it is also worth mentioning that at this point in World War II, the Japanese hadn't yet taken Shanghai, but it's just a matter of time before they do. What will happen when that happens? What if, Paul's cover is blown sky high? What if Tanaka, the local strong Japanese guy in Shanghai, played by Ken Watanabe, finds out who he really is and who he is really working for? That is essentially what Shanghai is. Now, if you're just looking at this thing and you see what it is a period piece, it is a whodunit scenario, we have spies, we have World War II, we have mysteries and stuff like that. This should be right up my alley, and I have all the tools available to them for making this astonishing and fantastic movie. Now, why does this movie fall a little bit short on how good it could have been? Well, for starters, I will say that John Cusack, who plays Paul, is not the optimal choice for playing him. I know that Johnny Depp at one point was attached to the role. I think that could have been better. I also think that somebody like Ben Affleck or Matt Damon probably could have done a better job. Now, John Cusack isn't bad. He's just a little bit bland and a little bit boring and not that interesting as a character. But he does a decent job. Gong Li is pretty okay and Chow Yun-fat is good, but the two best performers in this movie is by far David Morse, who plays Paul's boss, and Ken Watanabe, who you're not quite sure of exactly where he's going to fall in this movie. Is he going to, be this ultra bad guy, or does he, show humanity at some point? We will see. The unpredictability surrounding this thing is probably one of the most fascinating aspects of the movie. The other big problem this movie has is its visual look, because I don't know if this is because they had to move production to London or if this was an artistic choice, but I think this movie doesn't look as good as it could have had. Either this was an artistic choice or it was because they ran, short on budget. But the cinematography in this movie is quite poor, if I may say so. because it's very dark and we have this sepia toneness and we have these hues of yellow that engulf this entire movie. Either that was an artistic choice, a bad one, or it was because of the budget limitations, which makes it a little bit of a shame. We also have bad editing, especially when it comes to some of the action sequences in this movie that makes this thing look like a bit of a poor man's version's Hong Kong action movie. But we have tension here, we have interesting characters, we have a fascinating story, and I'm always up for movies with fedoras and voiceovers and mystery surrounding, you know, who has killed who, or, you know, historical aspects of World War II, watched from a slightly different point of view. But still, this movie failed really to connect. There is something that's missing here. It feels cold and it feels distant, and it feels like Mikael Håfström is a bit disinterested in the whole thing. Or maybe he's just a bit peeved that he has to rush certain things, because he has basically tried to squeeze in a much longer movie into a rather short movie, to the point where we actually have a voiceover at the end telling us what happened to certain characters after the movie has ended, and inevitably making those, you know, things sound a lot more interesting than what actually, you know, we get to see in this movie, making the movie feel like it was supposed to be this 4-hour epic or something like that, but in this case it's a rather small story. It is basically title cards in a movie with a fictional character, which feels a little bit off, but that is a story for another time. I think that Shanghai is a good movie. The movie has tension. A especially nerve-wracking sequence towards the end of the movie is especially memorable, and is the type of things that should happen in this type of movie. Just it should happen more than once. Sometimes it's a little bit confusing to find out, you know, who is doing what to who or why. But there is a fascinating story here, and I do recommend this movie, but it is a bit forgettable. You won't remember seeing this in 2 days after having seen it. It is a movie that goes in through one ear and goes out the other, and doesn't leave a lasting impression. The acting is pretty fine overall, the characters are okay, and I like the atmosphere and the mood in the movie, but on the other hand, it is hampered a little bit by how this movie looks. But it is a decent enough budget, and there is decent enough production value in this thing that you can see what kind of an awesome movie that lurks just beneath the surface. But as good spy thrillers goes, this is a pretty good one. Shanghai is a little bit disappointed considering what it could have been, but I will still give this movie 63 points. It is a good, solid movie that has decent production value, a little bit lackluster when it comes to the look of the thing. The soundtrack isn't that interesting, but you can squeeze out a lot with a little. And the mystery and the roads we take together with Paul on his journey, navigating all of these treacherous characters, who can you trust, blah, 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 is fascinating. And in the end, it is a movie that I'm not sad that I watched, but it is a movie I'm not going to rewatch anytime soon. But it was quite decent. So I'll see you next time from, well, so and so reviewing, well, such and such. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.